Greetings. So I first came to the Tower Hamlets Badminton Club towards the latter part of '96, and I had a head full of hair back then. As you can see, not much there now. Had a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot more fun in me too. It didn't take long to see that there was a clear division between two groups of people, them and us, let's say. Them being the 6 to 7 people, or probably a bit more, that had been there many years before I joined, playing on one side, and all the newcomers would join another, and that included me. After a few years of being there, started to enjoy the game a bit more, and realizing the health benefits of badminton being such a wonderful sport for keeping fit, I thought, well, I'll take this as a challenge to see what I can do for myself with badminton and for the club. Over the coming years, demand increased. We had a lot more people coming into the club. The level of players increased quite a bit, and during that time their numbers dwindled a little, so people started to lose interest, got injured, had other commitments, etc. They were a lot older than we were. Things were pretty good. Management was pretty much the same sort of people, had a few more people going in there, including myself, because we were paying a bit more attention now. Things were pretty fair up to that point. To keep it short, fast forward by about 10 years. A lot more people started to pay attention, including some of the younger guys who've been there for quite a few years now. Started to pay more attention to the management. They wanted to see what they could do. Even though a lot of the committee members were not playing badminton much by that point, some of those core people that are still there now started to pay a bit more attention to retaining their position, to ensuring that they can keep their seats. That's when things started to turn a little ugly. I'm going to try and tell it to you in a chronological order so you see it my way. The first thing that happened after that was the president of the time, we also had a chairman, started to bring in new people to the committee to bolster his support. It's quite clear, because the first person he brought in was a friend of his who'd been to the club a few times before that, and it seemed at the time that he was brought in purely on the size of his wallet. The chairman wasn't very impressed with the arrangements. He left quickly after that. The next thing was, before every AGM, up to that time, there would be a meeting, a pre-AGM, where people would decide who would be chairman, etc. Well, that's okay, it's normal. A lot of people do that. But this was the AGM around 2008, 2009 maybe. People came in, and this is the first time that everybody was told that there is a trust in place, and that only the trust can nominate people who could be chairman, secretary, treasurer, and other members within the committee, and that this trust is not elected. This was also the first time the question of ownership came up, because a guy who in my view is the most honest person that I'd seen in that club, he's now left, questioned whether they owned the place, because the idea of this trust being in place where they control who can be elected, who can be officers in the club. And he was told, well, yes, that is the case. A lot of other things went on at that AGM, of course. The next thing that came up, and also mentioned at that AGM, is the question of shuttle misuse. As soon as the shuttles were actually taken away from management, from this person to other people, there was a significant difference in the number of shuttles being used. I'll let you decide on what happened there. Then came the question of a couple of fundings that we had in the early and middle of 2000, 2001, 2004 probably. Someone was discussing all this, passing around some paperwork. I didn't know about the funding. A lot of other people didn't know about the funding. And the very person who was in charge of the shuttles prior to that situation I mentioned earlier, he was also the secretary at the time, so I discussed it with him, and he was also, he's the one who actually raised it with me, so we discussed it, and I thought, well, he might continue with the discussions. Well, it didn't. It was all quiet. Nobody else talked about it after that. If nobody else is talking, why should I be the person continually talking and getting spat on all the time? So I left it. Question of course, the trust at every AGM after that still existed. They would go in, they'll tell people nobody else can nominate. People did question it here and there. So the next significant event was, there was a fight between two guys at the club. This was about 2 years ago, so 2013 Ramadan. It was the worst fight the club had ever seen. There was some injury. So there were some meetings to discuss what should happen to these individuals. Obviously something had to be said to set an example to others. So there was a first meeting where it was clear, I was a witness to it, there were quite a few other witnesses to it. It was clear that one particular guy started the fight, but it was agreed that both parties got injured. Whatever happens, it should happen to both the individuals. So they were told that they should apologize and try and move on. One of them said he would not apologize. One of them said, yes, I'm very sorry, and I will apologize. It should not have happened. So there was another meeting following that. People were told that things were said, but they wouldn't say who said what. And as anyone can imagine, whoever said he is not willing to move on and would attack the other person if they see him is significant. But no, they said it is not important, you don't need to know who it is. So I said, well, fine, okay, let's try and move on, let's do whatever we do to both of them. So they were suspended. Within a short space of time, maybe another 2 weeks, another meeting was held. This time I was only told about an hour or two before the meeting. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I can't attend, and we just cannot carry on with these meetings all the time. So let me know what happens. They decided that the person, it wasn't clear at the time as to who said what, but people knew later. So one of the people was kept and the other person was told to leave. Now everybody knew that the person who was kept is the person who started the fight. But that's fine. They decided it, and apparently the reason for that, one of the persons said is, well, we had to look at who was actually the best for the club. Another person said something else which I won't tell you right now. Now, to me, that's just is plain wrong, okay? And some might even argue that it was clearly racist. Now, on the question of the trust that they have, dug into things, and it transpires that all it is that they registered 5 individuals as directors within a private limited company by guarantee. I'm going to let you guys read into the details of how things are set up, but it is clearly not a trust. And it was either a misunderstanding of the individuals involved, because when it's a private limited company, the directors can be referred to as trustees, but it is not a trust as such. So it was either a mistake or it was pure deception, and people didn't question it. As I said, people did ask here and there about the trust and about the question of not being able to nominate people for offices, but didn't make too much fuss over it. One other very important thing I must tell you. At that 2008-2009 AGM, actually after that AGM, when they first started talking about the trust and telling people that nobody can nominate officers, I asked to see the constitution. Because I know that people here and there were talking about changing the constitution, and I think some of those key individuals got together and decided on the constitution. Obviously, if other people are not talking about it, again, I didn't make too much of a fuss, but I wanted to see the constitution. I asked a few times, no response. People kept ignoring me. Didn't make a fuss, left it at that. Now, after the situation of the fight that I told you earlier about, I thought, well, this is bad. They could decide on who is best for the club at any time they wish and get rid of that person for any kind of reason. Or look at me now. So at that time, I asked for the constitution again after the meetings and the decision I told you about. Now that was clearly the time. That was clearly when things started going wrong for me. I thought it was perhaps of the way I argued about the situation that looked a bit racist to me, and that it shouldn't be that way, but it was actually the question to see the constitution. Now, I told you in my previous videos, I think video number 2, as to what happened and what set me off and why I realized that I had to do something about this. Look at this.